Hi, I'm Mukoso, and I'm your host for the Share My Experience podcast. I can't say exactly how we became friends. All I knew was that we somehow became inseparable. We sat next to each other on the school bus and in class. We walked back home from school together and went to the same after-school lessons. At some point, people started to switch up our names because they considered them somewhat synonyms. At first, I idolized her. I thought she was pretty cool and very smart. She seemed to know a lot about a lot. But much more than that, she was brave, unafraid. She was confident and not afraid to speak her mind. Gosh, I wanted to be like her so badly. I, on the other hand, was afraid of everything. Getting into trouble, being punished, not doing well, especially in math, and not being liked. I guess what kept me enthralled by her was that she was so different. She was everything that I wished I could be. She could talk to anyone, the cool kids and the nerds. I was so awkward and shy, and social situations made me nervous. I liked hanging out with her. She made me seem cool. Her mind was so quick, it amazed me. She noticed things straight away and was able to draw fast inferences. But she was also a little loud-mouthed and said whatever she liked without much tact or sensitivity. She was quite judgmental, and to be honest, so was I. But I wasn't outspoken about it. That was the difference. Now, you can't truly be friends with someone without having much in common. In our case, not only did opposites attract, there was a commonality, and it was our propensity to judge people. Me secretly, but she quite openly. In retrospect, I was probably her prey. After she had moved into our neighborhood, she immediately noticed the dynamics of our little friendship circle, the one that existed for as long as I could remember. We had a leader, the one older kid who ran the show. She was the one who decided who was in or out of the circle. Usually, anyone who didn't do as she said was out, and the rest of us did our best not to get on her bad side so that we wouldn't be excommunicated. Some days we'd get the memo that someone was out of the circle, and we weren't allowed to speak or play with them. It sucked when it was me though, and the only way back in was to go and grovel, even if you didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes the fine for coming back in would involve a small bribe, a gift of some sort to appease her, and sometimes it was just outright extortion, where she would demand a specific item before you were let back into the circle. But my new friend came in and saw all of this and made it very clear from the onset that she wanted no part of it. I remember her telling us how dumb she thought it was that we all pandered to our leader. She inspired me, and that was all the courage I needed to defy the status quo. The next time I was ousted from the circle, I didn't care. I ignored the usual protocol and hung out with my new friend instead. This eventually earned me emancipation from the group and a new status equivalent to the one of my new, brave best friend. We had achieved it together. It was exhilarating to break free and forge a new friendship. However, retrospectively, I believe I was essentially jumping from the frying pan straight into the fire. The things I admired about her were also the things I eventually came to detest. She could be very reckless with her words, but at first I interpreted it as being outspoken until she started to say mean things to me and shame me publicly. She was my, in quotes, best friend, but why was it then that she joined in with the other people who made fun of me? This was my introduction to the concept of frenemies, but no one had defined it as such back then. All I knew was that it was confusing and hurtful. to have my friend do things that demonstrated dislike, but still acted like they liked me and called me their best friend. The turning point of our friendship came at a time when I was going through a particularly difficult time at home, and I told her about it. She was my best friend after all. I know my mother had said we could tell no one, but I made this exception. Not long after, she blurted out a very hurtful comment based on what I had told her while we were playing in class. It cut me so deeply, but I couldn't speak up about it. I wasn't brave, and I didn't quite know how to articulate my feelings. It wasn't until another day when she was making fun of me about something that I had told her that I told her off. I was so angry, and I brought up the comments that she had made previously. Now, we were in class when all of this happened, and speaking my mind in front of everyone and calling her out like that was so embarrassing, and it made her look bad. Of course, as someone who was used to being the outspoken one, she couldn't handle what I had just done. The bad press was crushing, and she started to cry. And she started to explain to everyone that she didn't mean what she said. She didn't mean it like that when she said it. Now, I can't explain the satisfaction I got at that moment, because it appeared that I had gotten some kind of justification at last for all the times that she had been mean to me. But that didn't last. She went back and reported me to the leader of our childhood group. I guess she needed validation from any source because I didn't understand why she went to her. Well, the verdict was that I was wrong to have brought it up like that. After all, she was my best friend, and I should have called her aside and told her about this in private. And besides, I should have known that she didn't really mean what she said. Lacking self-confidence as a teenager can be very damaging. It makes you believe the wrong things about yourself and forces you to take on a very skewed perspective when analyzing issues involving you and others. I accepted everything that I was told. I accepted everything that I got because I believed that that was what I was worth. The truth is, I didn't particularly like this friend of mine, but I felt like I was being forced to be in this relationship with her. She wasn't always nice to me, but I stayed friends with her because I felt like I had to. Whenever I thought, right, enough is enough, and just stop talking to her, I'd be guilt-tripped by others into reconciling with her. Because first of all, it wasn't Christian-like to keep malice. And people believed that we were best friends and we were made for each other. It was a very exhausting friendship, and I secretly resented her. I guess at some point, I allowed myself to become her frenemy. There were so many things that she did that I was angry about, but I couldn't express them. And anytime I got a chance to get back at her, I took it. Once, I told on her to someone that she had gossiped about without considering the consequences. Again, I felt like another opportunity to get back at her had come, and I took it. But I was wrong for that. It also didn't turn out well for me because nobody likes a snitch. Of course, she played the victim to the hilt so well, and so everyone who heard her side of the story judged me as that evil friend. I learned a very hard lesson from that situation. Even after another forced reconciliation following the incident, I was still 100% sure that I didn't like being friends with her. I didn't know another way out, and I was eagerly looking forward to the end of our friendship, but I just didn't know how to break away from her. We eventually left school and went on with our lives, and the friendship died a natural death. She moved abroad, I stayed back here and made other friends. I moved on from that friendship, determined not to let anyone have that much power over me. And by the time I got into university, I would only associate with people that fit my definition of low-maintenance friendships. I had a pretty small circle, and even though I tried, I still found that some of that toxicity that I tried to escape in secondary school still came through. had somehow managed to pick a friend who exhibited the same kind of traits as my frenemy, but presented them quite differently. It took some time to understand what was going on and to see her for who she truly was. I didn't learn my lesson and perpetuated the cycle of toxic friendships for a pretty long time. And now, the afterword. Teenage friendships shape us by teaching us lessons that we interpret in ways that may positively or negatively impact our adult relationships. I've often heard it said that your childhood friends are the best ones that you'll make in life, mostly because they're the ones who will love and accept you with no guile and hidden intentions. I tend to disagree. Mostly because children and teenagers are still in self-discovery mode, and even though a large part of their personality is already formed at this time, they're still subject to their emotions and environment and are very adaptable at that stage, not quite set in their ways. So they most and generally will and do change. Proverbs 13:20 says, "Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm." Now that's one scripture I wish I knew back then. Fear is such a crippling emotion. No, scratch that. Fear isn't an emotion, it's a spirit. The Bible has "fear not" mentioned 365 times, and most people believe that it's one for every day of the whole year. Fearful teenagers find it difficult to express themselves, their likes and dislikes, and it often keeps them from speaking up when they should. Eventually, they may tend to accept behaviors and situations that they shouldn't have in the first place. Forging friendships or making the decision to stay in relationships based on fear is very unhealthy. Being afraid to leave because you've somehow defined yourself based on the relationship is quite common in your teenage years. It could be very hard to see yourself without your crew, your best friend, your boyfriend, or your girlfriend. But it's important to consider the value and the true importance of the association. Absolutely no friendship or relationship is worth your self-esteem and mental health. If it doesn't make you feel safe, empowered, loved and valued, you probably don't need that kind of friendship anyway. An important verse to memorize and keep in mind is this: "The righteous choose their friends carefully, but the way of the wicked leads them astray." And that's from Proverbs 12:26. The book of Proverbs contains so many wise words about friendship. Check them out. I love you, and I'm praying for you.